If you think about in Tai Chi, you want to develop what is referred to as kind of whole body power. And on a simple level, and kind of unfortunately, it's often just done on this level, kind of whole body power is really where you just kind of, you get your whole body really to move as one unit. And through that, you convey as much power as you have through basically your legs and your waist. On a more sophisticated level, having whole body power really involves developing a really good connection through your spine into your legs and into your arms. And so when you do one thing through the core of your body, it's reflected into what you're doing in your legs and arms. And it's getting those things all really unified is what is really the challenge. I mean, it's one thing, like if someone comes over here for a second, like, did you come here for a second, Jim? Okay. It's one thing, if I'm going to push Jim and I just kind of really just become really stable with my body, I can move him around. But I'm not especially utilizing the strength of my whole body. I'm pushing him with my legs, I'm moving him around the room, but I'm not utilizing a lot of other pieces of my body that have to do with getting strength up there. And so what we're going to be working on is how do we get those other components really to start working and getting them to work together? Because the key is getting them to all work at the same time. It's too slow to kind of do a sequential kind of opening of the body and stuff. It really has to be simultaneous in order to really maximize its power. And again, it's like, this is where you kind of, it's easy to kind of run into some things that are a little bit confusing, because like in the Taiji classics, they talk about the Jing starting in the feet and being controlled by the waist and being manifest in the hands. And in a sense, that is correct, but it doesn't tell you much about what's underlying it, which is the fact that, yes, it does start in the feet, but it doesn't go feet, waist, hands. It really, everything is doing it all at once, but the actual sense of the energy does follow that progression. But the actual movement in your body and the integration of the movement of your body is done simultaneously. So I'm going to have you start out with a really simple little kind of drill with two people. So if I'm here with Jim, let me see this on the frame, okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to just walk, have a sense of walking through the person, just. Because what you want to do is, if you notice when I do this, there's a tendency, and what I don't want you to do is kind of like go and get into this struggle with him, or kind of just your whole body collapse. It's like you want to keep everything really full and move your whole body. And you can do it in a straight line, you can do it side to side, whatever. But just try to get a feeling for that, because then what we got to do is we got to add in all the pieces so that what you're doing in your legs gets coordinated with what's going on in your back and what's going on in your arms.
Do you want the other person to resist?
Yeah, they can resist some. Yeah, kind of depending on your level of strength and stuff like that. You know, yeah. Okay. So the idea there is just really to kind of just get a sense of, okay, how do I move my whole body through space without kind of collapsing it and without losing its kind of structural integrity. And if you look at it carefully, you can actually generate a pretty decent amount of power that way. But there's things you want to do with your body that will help you generate quite a bit more. So I want to go back and look at, some of what we've done before in some of the other seminars on bend the bow. And kind of, if you think of this from a standpoint of it being a structural thing, the idea is what we're trying to do is we're trying to tie through our backs our upper and lower body together. And so they really work in harmony with one another. And the key is, at least on a certain level, is getting the kind of center point, which is where your psoas muscles and your latissimus dorsi and trapezius overlap. Because that's like the point, which is actually where the Ming Men is, in terms of the Chinese description of it. That's a big transfer point where you have very strong muscles in your body basically joining. They don't actually join, but they connect to the same vertebrae. And so you end up with this very efficient transfer of strength through that point. And that's where you really learn to start integrating the strength. So what I want to have you do, if someone comes up here, Jim wants to come up. Jim, why don't you just go ahead and put your finger there for a second. So Jim's putting his finger on what's my Ming Men point. If I want to integrate this from Ming Men down, I want my pelvis rolling forward slightly, also spreading, but it's from that point down, and then from that point up. I'm stretching forward slightly and up. So what this does in effect is it makes my spine form a very shallow crescent type shape. And then you release it.
So that's about L1.
Mm-hmm. So just do this with a partner for a few minutes. Really try to get that point, and so you really start feeling that that's where you're centering the bowing of your spine.
Do you want to say more about where that spot is?
Right there. So now what I'm going to do, if two people come up here, I want to have you do a three-person exercise with this that'll help. One person's going to do what you were just doing and really help you keep focus on that one point. But then what I want you to do, so like Richard, you came up here and get that point on Jim's back, and Jim's going to start doing it. Okay. Now what I want Jim to do is I want him to have a feeling I'm going to push on him. And what I want him to do is I want him to take my strength into his spine rather than like holding it in his arms or trying to transfer it into the ground. For now, I want him to take it into his spine.
So not lunging either.
And you should feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't feel that.
So it's not in his arm, Jim? It's in his spine?
In the spine.
Because his spine feels like it's not moving.
Oh, it's moving quite a lot.
I feel like
I
I'm
mean-
moving. I feel like I started moving.
Compared to what his movement was before, you know.
That could be.
All right.
And the interesting thing about doing this in Tai Chi, if you do this as an isolated exercise, you might get a lot more movement. When you're doing it in Tai Chi and you're actually kind of storing your opponent's strength or taking their strength into you, the amount of bow is actually fairly shallow. I want to have you for a minute, we're going to start really trying to connect the arms into your spine. Then we'll connect your legs into your spine. It's a little bit easier to kind of connect your arms, so it's a more appropriate place for most people to kind of really start. Okay, what you have to do, let me turn around. If you watch my shoulder blades and my spine, see how when I do this, my shoulder blades actually move away from my spine as I'm bowing? This is important. And the key is keeping your elbows lengthened from your spine. So you don't want to do this. If like Jim comes up here again, Jim's going to push on me for a second. What I don't want to do is this, where, let's turn around. If you look at my shoulder blades, see how they're collapsing into my body?
Right.
And then I'm pushing out, they're going out. No, I want to go like this. Push hard. That's really important because otherwise you don't get a really efficient transfer of your opponent's strength into your spine. What you end up doing is actually you end up kind of pinching and holding their strength in your shoulders.
So is that how we just?
Yes. Yeah, that's the phrase. So sometimes it's mistakenly thought that hollowing the chest is something that's done like for the sake of kind of really softening, which it is to some degree, but it's really more to get your arms really opened out from your spine. And so that when strength is going either into you through your hands or it's coming out through your hands, it's really efficiently connected into your spine.
Dropping the elbows really cemented stuff.
Well, there's ways to do it with your elbows out.
Length out.
Yeah,
Lengthen
it's really getting the length out from your spine. Yeah,
Initially,
it's probably harder for you. What it does really, depending on the angle of your elbows, it really changes the place where the strength goes into your spine. And generally speaking, as your elbows come up more, the strength goes into your spine at a higher point. And as you bring your elbows down, it goes down lower. And in a lot of styles of Taiji, one of the goals in doing this vis-a-vis what you're doing with your spine is to get what's happening with your elbow and your arm alignment so that when that strength comes in, it goes into that point that we were talking about. And so that you can really then transfer it efficiently into your legs as well.
So when we're making these kinds of movements in the Tai Chi form, should we be thinking along these,
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
lengthening
Yeah.
here
yeah,
and this
Yeah.
widening around the back?
mhm, yeah. Just as an example, I'll do like a brush knee I'll do it Yang Tso and Mu Tso, just for the contrast. And I'm going to do it back to the camera again. See how my back really opened up?
Yeah.
Okay, same thing in the Mu Tso. Yeah. That's really critical because if you don't have that opened up, although it's not static, it's not like I get to this place and I hold it. If you don't have it really kind of connected well, you'll end up using a lot of local strength in your upper body to try to accomplish what you're trying to do. And in Tai Chi, what you really want to do is you want to get your whole body involved so that you have a much more unified strength and a lot more power. So I want to have you go back to doing the deal we were doing with 3 people. And what I wanted you to be really careful of is that you get your arms out enough from your spine so that when someone pushes on you, you don't collapse your shoulders in. It actually goes into your spine rather than into your shoulders. Okay, I want to show you something I see a lot of people not doing. And it makes a big difference, actually. So if a couple of you come up here and do the deal, someone push on Jim, that's fine. You can just do the 2 of you there. Okay, so go ahead and do, okay, Jim. Okay, actually Jim started to do it, but if you look what's happening, go back. As you go here, you really got to keep your chin up and in so it doesn't collapse. And you also don't want to over articulate your neck like that. So it's really a sense of, go ahead, Jim. What that does is a way to think of this is you don't want like your head going beyond your pelvis. And so if you think of really how much movement you actually really are having doing this, it's not that much in your lower body. It's a little bit going under. Well, then my head goes up that far. But you don't want to go like this. You don't want to overdo the top. And there's a number of reasons for this, but from really just a pragmatic standpoint, if you do that, you're going to really cut off a lot of your field of vision. You're going to become very vulnerable.
It's just that little bit.
Yeah, that little bit of making sure your neck is engaged in it, so you're using your whole spine is actually very
The
important.
cervical spine should lengthen
Yeah.
as the upper part of the bone.
Yeah, yes.
Not just up to the thoracic spine.
Right, right.
The cervical
It's
spine's
the
included.
entire cervical spine as well, okay? Exercise. And then have a sense of trying to straighten and release. Don't worry so much about the getting a big bang out of it, but really get a sense of getting that storage into their spine, and then as you straighten, let it go out. So just go ahead and try it. And if you want to feel me do it, I'd be glad to, because it's kind of interesting to feel if you haven't really felt it. Now, what'd you have for lunch?
You'll find out.
So I resist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you will be, by the end of tomorrow, you'll be able to do this.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
We only did,
Oh, you can just go ahead and cross your hands.
all right, cross my hands like
Yeah.
this.
Bang into the wall.
The interesting thing is when you get to where you do this reasonably well, the harder the person resists, the more it gives you. Okay, so, oh, it's done. Oh, you've done this before. It's fun.
What's happening now?
I'm,
Pulling it in,
yeah,
you're taking it in, and then
and then just releasing it. Yeah. Go ahead and go really go into your spine. You're actually mostly in your upper spine now. So you really need to get lower. Okay, your strength. Okay. Now, don't think of driving forward. Straighten. If you watch me do it for a second. You're straightening your spine out to get the power out. Don't push yourself away. He actually would have had a lot more power because what he did is he pushed him off. Yeah,
Recoil going.
yeah, yeah. That was better. Okay. So go ahead and just keep working on this a little more. Does it make the person kind of tip forward when you do it? And it does. And the interesting thing about this is if you do it with a light touch, it basically it makes the person fall, literally. Because what they're doing is they're anticipating my power coming forward, and so they naturally bring their power up to fight it. And then I just don't give them the power. And so it's
Very deceptive.
yeah, it's very deceptive because you really there's this anticipation that you're going to confront the person's strength, and then the strength isn't there, and so it throws you off balance. And we'll go into this a little bit tomorrow more about how you kind of really do this, but I wanted to just kind of show you that this thing that happens to the person you're pushing very much affects their balance and their strength. And then they kind of, and so you get their strength, and then you get to give it back to them. So I'm going to have you do a kind of two-person deal here to help you get more kind of length out through your arms and shoulders. So if someone wants to come here and be the victim, go ahead and lie down on your back. Okay. What I'm going to do is I want to have Michael really relax his shoulder. And then I'm going to have Jim help me with this.
Okay.
Because what I want you to do, Jim, is I want you to work at getting his shoulder nest to release. And as that happens, I'm going to slowly start kind of stretching out from his shoulder, getting more length. What happens is I do this, if you're the person who's kind of doing the lengthening out, you'll feel places like, okay, like right there, okay, he's starting to resist a little bit. And what I'm doing is, instead of kind of going, okay, I'm going to pull through where he's resisting, I sort of release and then go at it again a little bit. And it's sort of like more like it ends up giving it a massage. And lo and behold, at some point it'll release and you'll get a little more length out. And then you'll find another spot where it kind of resists. Now, next thing I want Michael, now you're going to become active in this. Okay, so as I lengthen out, what I want you to do is I want you to just very slightly do a little bow in your spine. And try to feel where the strength and the connection is happening along your spine. Ideally, what you want to be able to do is, then if you're really mean, you don't do the other side. You just. One of the reasons you want to be able to really feel where the strength is in your spine is from a martial standpoint, because I want to be able to grab the other person's spine and control them. And if you can't feel it in your own spine, you probably aren't going to feel it in somebody else's. Now here's an interesting thing. If you're seeing how, like, where it seems to go in your spine, okay, let's say I change the angle. Changes the connection to your spine. So what I want to do now is I want to just maybe just show you kind of one of the reasons you want to get this connection really developed, because you want to be able to really feel your opponent's spine when you're doing stuff with them. So like if Jim comes up here for a minute. Yeah, go ahead and turn that way. Yeah, so you can kind of see to the side. Let's say if I'm working with Jim, and I'm just going to do this as a little exercise right now, but look at how I can get his balance with actually very little strength. And if you watch his spine, if you can get a shot of his spine, Ron. See how it's going off? Well, if I can get that, and I can feel where it is, then I've got his balance. If I can't feel where it's happening, it's harder, because then I'm kind of just randomly shooting at it and trying to get a hold of it. But if I can actually feel where in his spine it's buckled, it's pretty easy to move the person around. So that's one of the reasons for doing this, is you want to really develop the ability to feel where it's happening in you and where it's happening in the other person. Because one of the three primary ways in Taiji and in virtually all internal martial arts, how you control somebody is you either control them through their spine, you control them through their legs, or if you get really good, you control them through their feet. And the way you control them through feet is very counterintuitive, because it's not necessarily that I'm trying to push through his feet, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get his feet to come loose. You see how it kind of popped him up for a minute? I'm just popping him up. So I have you do this with a partner and just kind of play around with this a little bit, trying to get a sense of, okay, where do I feel this? And I'm kind of lengthening them out a little bit. I'm also doing something that helps get you this. I do a very slight twisting. Now again, I'm not doing this with a lot of pressure or strength. It's actually more effective if you do it lighter. Because one, if you do it light, the person has no idea what's coming. It's like it just comes out of nowhere because they're not anticipating it. So if I do this really light, it's like it's very strange sensation because your structural integrity is compromised without you really even noticing.
Well, the
Okay.
idea was that I just.
I want to have you watch something for a second. Well, I'll do this with Ron.
It's like, okay.
Hey, hey!
Hey, yeah, I want you to watch, get to a place where you can watch Ron's spine for a minute. Okay, as I go in and I feel where his lock is, there. Okay, if I'm a little more aggressive with this, I'm not going to do it really aggressively, but, but what I want to do is I want to lock it in. And then if I were to do something, really kind of percussive or, strong at that point, it basically, it's like the equivalent of doing an arm bar, but you're doing it on the person's spine. And if you do it really hard, it hurts them a lot.
So you're having to get that locked,
Yeah, yeah.
and then actually you're wanting to lock the spine more than the arm.
Yes, absolutely. In terms of like doing throws and stuff like that, if you can lock the person's spine, it's relatively easy to do what you want to do with them. If you lock the arm, if the person is loose or anything, they'll get out of it. It just arm bars are very difficult to actually really get somebody on unless they just don't have any idea of how to get out and they just fight it all and stuff. Then you might have a chance. But it's really so. If someone else wants to feel this,
I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll do it again.
Yeah. So I'm going in until I really there's where I feel it. I haven't really locked it, but I feel where it's connected into his spine now. Okay, now I'm going to lock it. And you see, if I were to just, I could just do almost anything I would want to him right now. Because you end up in this frozen.
Tension,
Yeah.
Tension.
Is there a basic technique for locking it in?
Yeah, a little more twist.
Because
Yeah. A little more twist and a little more lengthen or a little more compression. You can do it both ways. Yeah.
The arm goes this way.
Yeah, that was, you can do it the other way.
You can do the
Yeah,
other way, too.
yeah, and you can do it by pushing in or pulling out.
What you're doing is you're reaching the limits
Yeah,
before you have to.
yeah, yeah. So like, I'll have Michael do it on me. Now, if you, this is where having a loose connection in your own body really helps because if I keep loose, it's going to be quite a ways before he's going to reach my limit.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite. There we go.
It's
Yeah, and that's the really fun thing about Robert, is normal people have gone long before that point.
Yeah. So go ahead and go back and do a little more of this. Try to see if you can get a feeling for like, okay, that's where I feel it in their spine, and then see if you can kind of just do a little more and put that lock on. So one of the things I've been sort of showing is is depending on how you twist and the angle and whether you kind of compress in with the twist into the person's spine or you lengthen out from their spine makes a difference on how they kind of move when they get locked up. So if someone comes up here, just as a quick example. Oh.
No, please.
And again, you want your hands to be really soft. This is done with really, really light contact because if you do it with heavy, it's not that you can't do it with heavy contact, but if you use heavy contact, it makes it much, much easier for the person to read what's going on. If your contact is light, it goes right under the radar 90% of the time, and the person doesn't get what they want to read what you're doing. So like his example, like with Jim, if I were to do it like this, it sets stuff off all the time, right away. He's like, okay, danger, Will Robbins. If I do it nice and soft, it's like, oh, doesn't necessarily really even notice it. So,
It's too late.
yes, until it's too late. And it actually can be done. And if I want him to go up rather than down, I generally will compress into his spine, which will lift him. If I want him to go down, I'll twist him down. Now, just as a reminder in the Tai Chi form, you know, in both Yang and Wu style, there's these, or like in the Yang style, there's like, you know, like what's called tuiso, raising hands. There's also play the guitar. Well, they're both energetically completely different. One is about lifting the person, the other is about pulling them down. That's true both in Yang and Wu. And that's one of the reasons, although externally they may look very much the same, energetically they're doing a completely different thing. And if I'm kind of doing what I would say, I think it's easier to see in the Yang style just because the circles and stuff are bigger. If someone wants to, like Jim comes up here, because I know he can take this. If I'm doing raising hands in Yang style, I'm doing that. I'm going up into his spine and getting a hold of it. And I'm just popping. If I'm doing play guitar, I'm doing just the opposite. I'm kind of whiplashing him. And if that's done really hard, it can actually cause a lot of back problems. So if you look at the movement in the form when you're doing that, there's a little snapping. And you're actually whipping your spine and body and then transferring it into him. So it's like cracking a whip, except for he's the end of the whip. And so it's like, it's an interesting experience. It's like, and I'm not doing it very hard.
No.
Again, if I can feel into his spine and do that, I can control it. You know, I can do it really light and just get him off his foot a little bit. You know, just. So I want to go back and work with this a little more, but try to get a feeling for this, the difference between those two, between raising hands or tuisho and play guitar or whatever it's called. I'm evading my mind now. I can't remember the Chinese. So Jim was asking about, well, how do you do this if you're doing it fast? Because it seems like that's going to throw off a bunch of alarms and everything just because of the speed of it. But it's not really true. I mean, if I'm coming in here and I'm engaging John and I do this quickly, I'm still soft when I'm doing it. So you don't have a chance to really get a good read, even though it's going very fast. And what tends to happen is actually when you do it fast, if you stay soft when you do it, it moves the person really quickly. Instead of it being kind of a gradual thing, it's like it's happened almost before you really have any anticipation that you're going to be going down onto the ground. Sort of, someone else comes up here, or John will come up here again, because he's got a lot of flexibility. It's good. And it always looks better when you do it with someone who's big. Okay. One of the things that can become problematic practicing something like this is if the person who's like doing it fast, if they don't have enough control, they can end up kind of really slamming you accidentally, even if they're not really trying. So one of the things you want to do, if like John was coming at me here, I'm going to do this. Okay, now if I'm doing it slowly for a second, that's one move.
Yeah.
Comes at me again. Okay. That's more the one I did before. You see, I'm just kind of changing angles a little bit. The other thing that's real important is how my body's moving in relationship to him. So I'm not just staying here and trying to make this happen. I mean, I could do that, but it's not going to be as good. It's not going to be as effective. You can come back through. What I'm doing is this. But as I'm doing it, I'm moving myself into a position where I'm basically coming behind him. Just as a practical matter. So again, if I'm doing it a little quicker, see how I end up right behind him? That's what you want. one of the things I'm starting to show is how does this then evolve into a real basic throwing technique? And I wasn't actually throwing anybody, but one thing that's really overlooked in a lot of Tai Chi is actually how many throws there are. The Tai Chi form is probably at least a third to two-thirds throwing techniques. They're just, it's littered with them, and, so to speak. So if I'm doing this, what we've been doing here, where I'm taking Jim and I'm just doing this gentle kind of coaxing and getting him off, and then I just talk about, okay, now you want to start doing it so you get your footwork to get him behind. Let's go ahead and turn it here. Now, as I step in, if I'm going for a throw, I want to get his hip, because I bumps him and then he goes. So as I move in, I definitely want to get that little last kind of hook. It's very easy. It's really effortless if you get that. Even if I get the twist and I get kind of behind you, if you're good, you have a wiggle room out. There's a couple outs on those. But if the person really gets you with their hip right, it's pretty much over. And that's just a real fundamental kind of throwing technique that happens. So like Michael can do this. No, I'm not going to throw you. Okay, I want you to throw me. Okay, so okay, let's say I'm coming in. Okay, see how? Because he didn't get his hip on me, I spun out of it. So he really needs to. We can go. There you go. It really makes a huge difference. Yeah, that's okay. So twist me a little more. Get me turned more. There you go. Yeah. You see how that difference of getting your hip really makes a difference? Because if you don't get the hip, if someone has some skill around it, they'll spin out of it.
Why can't, the thing with you is, if I don't really get your balance, I don't have the entry to get the hip.
Right.
And you're very good at keeping your balance. So I have to absolutely get your spine, then I can enter
Right.
your center.
It's easy to have a misconception about doing throws. And again, like what Michael was saying, getting the control over me initially is what allows it to open up the entry.
If I don't have that scallop shape in Robert's back, then there's no way to walk through him. He's so flexible, he regains his balance. But you get that little, it's a little thing we're all feeling that little thing from our partners. Once you have that, then you can walk right through there.
Yeah.
Just like we were walking through at the beginning of
Yeah.
the class.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if you take a step or if you sashay. But, the one
Yeah.
step forward kind of thing. I'm always finding I have a wrong foot.
Well, in some situations there is a wrong or right foot to have for it.
Yeah.
Other times there's not. And probably the most important part of it is, one, getting the opening for the entry, but also learning how to be moving your feet as the entry is unfurling, for lack of a better word. Because then what happens is, by the time the entry's open, you're in the position where you want to be. Instead of like going, I get the entry, and now I'm going for the position. You want to have them really kind of coming out of the same motion.
Like walking through them, like
Yeah.
where you started.
Right, right.
Well, generally speaking, like if you're going to walk through in front of somebody, if I were to get Robert's balance here in front of me, I can walk right through his hip here, and obviously I'm going to walk through with this foot. If I have, see, I still don't really have his balance. That's the tricky thing about him. There we go. If I get behind here, he's escaping. I need my scallop shape. Here, I still don't have it. I still don't have it. This guy's so flexible. Let's see.
It's that special shirt he has on.
No, it's not the shirt. Be soft. I have to be softer. 'cause
Yeah, yeah.
If I give him anything, he
Okay, yeah, there you're starting to get down more, yeah. Okay, there you got my feet.
here.
Yeah, there
So
you go.
now, and he's going to
Except for
recover his balance really
except for you
quickly.
lost it.
I lost it, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Because what happened is when you got it and started to go into motion, you let off a little
Right.
bit, and
Can't
then
get this guy
I just rebalanced. Yeah,
it's cool.
yeah.
But it's all setting up the entry to walk through the center.
It's whoever keeps their center.
Yeah, in a sense. And also, it's also who controls the center of the two bodies. Because there's a third center that has to do with the motion of the two. And if you can make, the more you can make your center that center, the more effective you'll be.
Well, I like how you just stepped in front. I figured, you always had to sort of go for the back.
Oh, no, actually, there's a lot of straightforward
Walk right through.
walk through.
Right.
But because
Brush knee.
it's what Robert just said. And again, if I can get that scallop shape here, right now my center's here and his center's there. His is off and mine is set. So what I do is I make my center the center of the interaction between us, and then I can control him. If I stay out here, even though I have his balance, I have no.
Yeah, I mean, it's
effect
too
on him.
easy for me to just walk
Too
out of
easy
it.
to walk out. So you have to fill that gap and.
Okay. So you might go back and try this again, like I'm going to do this with Jim. I'm not going to do the throw, but I just try to see if you can get a sense of how do I get in here. See, like right now, I'm on top of him. I'm not going in for a throw. But see how as I turn him, I just took one step. Now, I can do a lot of things with him. What we were working on mostly was, so far, a lot of these techniques was the downward twisting stuff instead of the lifting stuff. So like if John comes at me here again, it pops him right out of his feet.
He was anticipating it.
Yeah?
There goes Michael's scalp.
Yeah. So you see how that lifting just really pulls him up. And that's raising hands or tuisho. You're really trying to connect into the person's spine, but then there's this lifting action and energy. And it makes the person kind of go whoop. And literally takes them up onto their toes. And then you can kind of move them wherever you want. Do almost whatever you want with them. Like that first time, you sort of overshot it. And I mean, if you look how vulnerable he is here, you have a person down on their back, virtually, immediately. Because there's really just nothing you can defensively do to counter it. Because you don't have any power, because you're disconnected from the ground. You might be able to do a little bit just independently with your knee, maybe, or your foot, but it's pretty hard. And your arm, the other interesting thing about this kind of technique, if you look where John's arm is, to throw a punch, he's got a long ways to go. He can't kick with his back foot. The only foot that he has that really has any mobility is that front foot. Yeah.
But you can't get strength to
No,
sweep either.
no, not very well, no.